Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of The Music Den. My name is Armando Venditti, and as you know, I will be a host, if you don't know by now, for these episodes on the channel. Um, this is going to be another DVD review, another music documentary DVD review. Sorry for being repetitious. We're going to feature some more Canadian uh, talent here. What I have here are three DVDs uh, that were put together, three separate documentaries that were put together by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in Toronto. And they focus on the Canadian music scene uh, from the 1960s through to the 80s. They are done in three volumes, and I will show them to you. The first one is called, I'll grab it for you here. And again, I'm going to try to avoid the glare. So please forgive me for the glare. The first one, if I can grab it properly, good Lord, is called Shaking All Over. Forgive the glare. There we go. And again, it focuses on um, the music scene in Canada in the 1960s. It goes into the 70s, but basically in the 60s, it was almost virtually impossible to be known in the States and get your name out there. Music, if you were a musician, to basically be promoted in the U.S. or around the world, basically. And a lot of bands had to go from Canada, drive either to New York or to, if you're in Vancouver, drive to LA and try and make it stateside. Um, there are a lot of bands featured here. Lighthouse is featured, a band called the Vancouvers, a band called the Collectors, which went on to become Chilliwack. Groups like the Guess Who are featured. Leonard Cohen's featured. Bruce Cohen, sorry, Bruce Coburn is featured, and Murray, Gordon Lightfoot, and it talks about also. Sorry if I didn't mention it. Leonard Cohen is featured as well. Also, groups like Ian and Sylvia, Buffy St. Marie. It just doesn't cover pop. It covers folk and rock and basically it's a good culmination of what was out and about in terms of what was on the scene in Canada in the 1960s. Also, Ronnie Hawkins is featured. Also, his backing band that would eventually became the band, who would also at one point back up Bob Dylan to either critical acclaim at some points or to criticism, vast amounts of criticism. But again, this is a very expansive set. All these sets are 90 minutes in length, and they have bonus features as well. Anyway, this is the first one. The second one, as I put this one down. And by the way, all the titles, "Shaken All Over" was a song by the Guess Who. The second volume that deals with the 70s is called "This Beat Goes On," and "This Beat Goes On" was a track by a group called the Kings, which was a song. It was a medley. "This Beat Goes On" and "Switching to Glide," which was produced by Bob Ezrin. So this is the documentary that covers the 70s and early 80s output. Again, another 90-minute collection here. And it covers groups such as Rush, obviously. Again, the Guess Who, Carol Pope from Rough Trade, Dan Hill, Nash Slash, who, if you don't know, he was a multi-instrumentalist, violinist, guitarist who basically bandaged himself up in gauze, so all with white gauze and just dark sunglasses, and you never really did see his face when he became more known. Who else is featured on here? Dan Hill, producers such as Daniel Lanois, and also it also covers the punk movement that was in Canada, which I really, growing up, I really honestly didn't know anything about that. There was a group called the Demics that had a song, I believe it was called Going to New York City, which was pretty popular. And yeah, again, another 90-minute, all these are 90 minutes in length. They're narrated by John Gomeshi, who used to be a radio talk show host on CBC. He had a show called Q on there. Yeah, that's the second volume. The third volume covers the 80s. And it basically features, from the early 80s up until from basically 1981 to 1989. This is called Rise Up. And Rise Up was a song from a Canadian group called the Parachute Club, which featured Lorraine Segato on guitar and lead vocals. And who's covered in this? Let's see here. Robbie Robertson, Maestro Fresh West, Corey Hart, Bruce Coburn, Mitsu, who was a French-Canadian artist who briefly, I believe, was signed to Hollywood Records in the US in the late 80s. Gowan, who had success in Canada with the album Strange Animal, and went on to join Styx for the last over 20 years, replacing Dennis DeYoung. We won't get into that because a lot of people find that are quite contentious about that. Who else is featured here? Just a corner. How can I put this? A cornucopia of talent is on this. Also was featured Tom Cochrane, Red Rider, who had a hit in the US with Lunatic Fringe, who people for some reason thought they were Pink Floyd when they heard it on the radio. I never got the connection with Pink Floyd and Red Rider. Not at all. Neither did he, but anyways. And another couple of artists that are featured on this one are Platinum Blonde and Dalbello, Lisa Dalbello. She went under the moniker of Dalbello in the 80s, and for me, she is a God-given talent, and she's vastly underrated. But yeah, these videos put together, again, interviews that were conducted for these three documentaries. Originally, it was released only on television, but they were put together and released, I believe, it was done in 2009. And I was lucky enough to I've watched this on TV, on CBC, on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation station. But luckily, I was able to find these in a record store. And they were like, for me, I think I paid like $15 each, which now you can get them on Amazon for like $26.95. It's a little bit pricey, but if you're interested in in the Canadian music scene, And it also, I've obviously glossed over it, but there's also, it covers again, like I said, the punk scene in Canada. It covers the reggae scene that was in Canada. Um, the fact that a lot of these bands, let me backtrack a little bit. In 1970, the Canadian government um, brought, I guess you'd say, a law into effect that 30% of the content that was on Canadian radio had to be Canadian. They called it CanCon. And when you looked at a CD or an album that was done in Canada, you would see a logo that would say, I believe it was MAPL, Maple, which meant that it was a Canadian product. And for a lot of artists, like Bryan Adams, for example, that was a bonus because it was difficult, even in Canada, to get your music on the air. And I mean, all the staples are here. There's also Gordon Lightfoot that's featured. I believe I mentioned Anne Murray as well. And yeah, there's also interviews from people, VJs, video jockeys from what was known as Much Music, that ran from 1984 to 2013, which was the equivalent of MTV in America. Personally, I liked Much Music better from what I've seen a little bit of MTV. But yes, it's a fantastic look at the history of the Canadian music scene. There is one glaring omission from this set, is that the band Saga, which started up in the 70s, debut album came out in 78, and they were quite popular in the early 80s. They were always known here in Canada, but their one success was in America with the album Worlds Apart, with the tracks On the Loose and Wind 'Em Up. But they are not featured on this documentary at all. I mean, there's like a glimpse of them in like a shot, like a video collage shot, but there's nothing mentioned on them, which I find is a bit disgusting and disrespectful. But that's just my very humble opinion. But other than that, it's a very fascinating look at all three, or a very fascinating look at the Canadian music scene. So if that piques your interest, check them out on Amazon, pick them up. It's very difficult to stream them on YouTube. I was able to once or twice, but I think the videos have been taken down. But if you want to pick these up, please do. And that brings me to the end of this particular video. If you like what you're seeing and you enjoy the content, please hit like and subscribe. And please leave a comment below. All these things help me with my attempt to have a channel. Anyways, that is it for now. And I hope you guys have a great day, and please be safe. Bye for now.